Hi, everybody. Welcome to mySewnet Facebook. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to give people a few minutes to join in and get started. My name is Soni Grint, and I have the pleasure of being here with you all for this mySewnet Facebook Live. I love software. I've been doing this a while. For any of you who have ever worked with embroidery software before for our brands or for different things within our company, I've been working with this since we were in DOS versions. So, oh my gosh, mySewnet is so easy as far as embroidery software goes. I see some of you are saying hi and hello, and gosh, it's great to see you and have you all here. I just do want to let you know a couple things. Today is the start of, and I see people saying hi. Today is the start of a 3-part series. So we're going to do a little workshop, and we called it Just Beyond because a lot of times we just get started with software stuff and you know the basics, but what I'm hoping to do is delve a little bit more into things, a little bit more. Some of you may know what I'm going to talk about today. Some of you may not. Some of you may have a mixture. So we're going to do a lot of different things. Pardon me. Today is all about like fonts, and it's about monograms and different things like that. The other thing, tomorrow we're going to do the next session. It's going to be more about stitch editing. So kind of going into editing things, not just color changing, but actually editing things. That will also be at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So same time tomorrow. On Thursday, we are going to go a little bit more into digitizing. We're not going to delve way in, but what we're going to do is talk about how can you do some basic things, make it fun using the Express design? What's the difference between Express design and using other things? We're going to do that on Thursday, but everyone, I want you to take a little note if you're going to join us on Thursday, because we did have to move this to 12:30 on Thursday. Okay, so 12:30. So today is 2, tomorrow's 2, Thursday is 12:30. So we'll remind you of that. But remember, we've got a 3-part series. Excited to be here. Hi, everybody from Kansas, San Antonio, Oklahoma, Ontario, Canada. I am so thrilled that you all are with us. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and get in. If you have questions, everybody, don't forget to put those questions in the chat. I have 2 fabulous helpers here, Amy and Meredith. They're going to be sending me questions. So if you have questions, certainly just put those in the chat. I will try to answer them to the best of my abilities. So we will work with that, kind of like that. If you just want to say something, I'll probably ask a few questions. So certainly answer and see what we can do to go through that. And the last little note I have is we don't have this happening too much anymore, everyone, but realize that we are not going to charge you for this particular sort of event, right? If you ever get something that says click here and it asks you for money, it is not through mySewnet. It is not through SVP. Please realize that that's some scammer. They've kind of slowed down a little bit, but I never want to forget, because I don't want you guys to think that we are trying to pull something over on you, because we're not. This is for you, and it's actually really, really exciting. And I see someone saying, can this be viewed later? If you can't make the live event tomorrow, you bet. We're going to record all of these. They will be put up on Facebook. So certainly you will be able to see all of this later. And then it will be put onto YouTube as well. So you'll be able to see what we're doing here. So, all right, guys, so let's get started. I want to ask a very simple question. All right, so I want to ask a very simple question. That is, how many of you actually own mySewnet software? Are there a few of you out there that actually own the software already, whether it be the subscription or the free trial or the box version? Does few of you have that? Some people say love MSN, so they'll love the mySewnet, which is great. Yep, a couple people saying yes, I do. Some of you have Premiere Plus too. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That's great to hear that. So it is what we're going to talk about today with the actual lettering. Okay, and platinum, and we've got a few. Okay, cool. With the mySewnet software, as well as with Premiere Plus 2. So again, some of you have Premiere Plus 2. What I want you to realize is we have got some of the greatest lettering, greatest fonts in the industry. And if you don't know that, you should be delving in more, because this is really fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my software. So we're going to split the screen here just a little bit so you can see the software as well as me. And when we do that, all I did is I am choosing I'm just choosing some of the letters, and we're going to talk about why a lot of the letters and why some things look a little different, right? So why some things look different, why you would choose certain letters over a different letter. So at this point, let me go back here. And when I just chose a regular size hoop, everyone, so I didn't do anything too exciting with a hoop. When you look at all of these different fonts that are available, so I've got all these different fonts available, right? In Premiere Plus, it was around 220 fonts. In mySewnet, it's 240 fonts or more. Lots of different fonts to choose from. Y'all, when you look at these fonts, and I'm just going to stop in display and look at this Astra font. And with that Astra font, when I click on that, okay, so when I click on that, you'll see that it says 2C 20 to 100 millimeters. So it says 2C 20 to 100 millimeters. Everyone, I hope you realize that what that 2C means, okay, so what that 2C means is it's a two-color font. So anytime you see a 2C, or sometimes you'll even see like 3C or different things like that, anytime you see that, that means it's a two-color font. Something else that I want you to realize is when you see UC, that means it's an uppercase only font. So if you type anything in, whether you type in an upper or lowercase, okay, so upper or lowercase, it's going to be all uppercase. So uppercase font. And then the other one, oh, I probably am in the wrong spot for this, guys. If you ever see something, here we go, not too far off. I'm going to come back up here. Do y'all see where this one says LC? Okay, so LC, that means it's a lowercase font. So let me do this. I'm just going to type hello in all capital letters, and I've chosen this Traffic LC font. When I click apply, it's going to be in all lowercase no matter what, because it's a lowercase font. Same thing. Now, oh gosh, I get too excited. I hope I'm not talking too quickly here. So I'm always going pretty quick. But again, with the lowercase, always LC means lowercase, UC means uppercase. So I'm going to come back to one of these, this little deco font. Let's type this all in lowercase now. And I'm going to type the same thing, hello. And this time I've got an uppercase font. Again, it's going to be all uppercase no matter what, just because that's the type of font it is. And everyone, the reason why I'm kind of going through this is we have fonts in the mySewnet software that truly are made in very special ways. Okay, so they're made in very special ways, meaning they're made for something specific. I want to share with you. Now, have you all been doing this? And did I just tell you something that you all know? Did you all know about that? I hope you did, but I've known so many people that it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know, that's what that meant. So the color, especially the uppercase and lowercase, I think it is really, important that we realize that, okay? Because that's why each of these fonts, again, is made very specifically for a lot of different things. The effects font, everyone. So the effects font, check these out. The felting is for using with felting needles, okay? So the felting is used for felting needles. The twin is for used with twin needles. I don't know if you guys realize you can actually stitch with a twin needle in embroidery. It is so cool. And I will tell you, gosh, I forgot to bring my twin needle sample. And Jamie, I see you saying, can you change the fill? I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. So just hold on. So with this twin needle, it is really cool. You have to be aware that with that twin needle, you don't want to choose too large a twin needle because you can break it in the foot. So, but like a 2 millimeter twin needle, really cool. Something else that I did want to share is, I'm going to keep coming down. I always have this I have to say very slowly. These foam fonts, say that 3 times fast. It's really hard. Foam fonts. I want to share with you. And Meredith and Amy, you were so quick to this. Foam fonts, if you look at that, can you guys see how that is it's like super, super thick. Can you see how that's got, it's got some thickness to it, right? A foam font is made to stitch over puffy foam. So that's what gives this wonderful lift. You often will see it on hats, caps, right? Things like that. But those foam fonts truly are made for using with puffy foam. So, so again, all these great fonts, and I love to look through them. I think they're really cool. Now, I am going to come down here just a little bit and getting to Jamie's question, but also something else that I really want to share with you is when I come down here, I am going to, and I did, honest to goodness, make a few notes here. So I'm going to go to the retro category here. So this is the retro category. And one of my favorite fonts, I actually love this font, Zephros, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm not quite sure, but I think that's how that's pronounced. Do you all notice that Zephros here, we have something that says 35 to 55 millimeters. Same font name, but it's saying from 55 to 80 millimeters. Now, if we were all together, everyone, I would be asking you the question. Do you know what the difference is and why there are 2 of the same fonts? I'm going to let you think about that because I know some of you may not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Zephros, and I'm actually going to type in ABC. Just something as simple as that. And I chose the 35 to 55 millimeters. All right, so the 35 to 55 millimeters. And here it is. And let me get rid of a couple of these things. So I see size. Yes, Zoe, that is correct. Part of it is the size. So this is the Zephros 35 to 55. I'm going to now choose, the Zephros 55 to 80. And there it is again. So same look to the font. They are created for a very specific size, but I'm going to show you that big difference in why it's created and different things like that. But one more little piece of it. I'm full of trivia today. I'm full of trivia today. Have you ever wondered, and I guess my trivia is things that I've wondered, so I'm just sharing that with you. Notice the Zephyros 55 to 80. It's definitely bigger. But do you know where that 55, so where this 55 number came from? Anytime, okay, so anytime that you are looking at a font and it has whatever size it has, the minimum size, whatever that minimum size is, that will be the size of the letter A in the font. So, and I should be very specific, the capital letter A in that font. So remember, this guy was 55 to 80. I can go to the View tab, okay? If I can go to the View tab and get length, and I go from the top of the letter A down to the bottom of the letter A, there is my 55 millimeters. That is the size of the font. Notice the letter B is not 55, right? The letter B is only 38. It's because the letter A is what controls the size for everything. So had lots of people ask me that question. So I do want you to realize that, that's where it is not all letters are going to be 55 or whatever. It's just going to be the letter A. That's what gives it the original size. And it's always going to come up at the minimum or the smallest number in that number range. So I see, Lee, if it's a large font, a plain satin stitch is not the best choice. That is exactly right. But there's something else that is really super important, everybody, here is in this font, let's play. And I want you to watch this a little bit. I want you to watch this. We're going to play these two fonts. All right. I'm going to go a little bit quick. Notice as this is stitching, this is the smaller font. There really is no underlay. There might be a straight stitch. See how there's a straight stitch? And if I say underlay, you know what that means. That's what's underneath the satin stitch. There really wasn't. I'm going to go back just a little bit more. Just go back to remind us. Look at this letter B. There's nothing underneath the satin stitch as I go forward with this, right? So there's really nothing underneath that satin stitch. Look closely with the larger font. So Lee, this is actually going to what you kind of said here is now we have, look at that. Oh, stop quick, Soni, stop. Oops. This underlay here, guys, this underlay is what is called an edgewalk. Okay, it's called an edgewalk. And it helps to hold your satin stitch and make it look nice and flat and even. That is what, that's basically what your underlay is it's helping to hold things nice and flat. So check it out. The larger letters has more underlay, right? So see how it has something to hold it nice and flat instead of just a straight stitch. And satin stitch, you guys know, it can kind of crunch in if it's too wide. So definitely you want to make sure, that you're choosing the font in the proper size that you want to use it. Because if you take this font here, so if we take the big font and shrink it down, there's going to be too much underlay. It's going to be too bulky. If you take a small font and make it too big, it's not enough underlay. So then it really is going to not hold its shape well. So does that make sense, guys? I hope that makes sense to you. You want to choose the font that's the right size, and that is very important. Okay, that is very important. No matter what software you're using, Okay, so whether it's Premiere Plus 2, mySewnet, whatever, it is important that you keep in that font range. It will do a better job. And then to Jamie's question earlier, okay, so Jamie, you asked about, can you change a fill pattern? Can you change, like here, you'll notice there's a pattern in this font as well. Let me cancel that. Here's the thing, and Leona, I see, wouldn't stabilizer help? Yes, it certainly does help, and I'm going to talk stabilizer in just a little bit. However, sometimes stabilizer is not going to give you enough support. That's why those letters that are really large letters, you definitely need to make sure you choose the right one and that it does have underlay. Okay, so that it does have underlay. If you don't, it can still shrink in no matter what stabilizer, you put down. So really important for that. All right, so this is the fun part, guys. I love fonts. This is the fun part for me. This right here, and if you haven't done this before, everyone, if you haven't done this, I go to the View tab. So View tab, and I choose this Get Length of Area. So it's going to show me how big an area or basically a stitch is. Can you all see I just pulled that little thing across? This is about a 9mm stitch. That's pretty darn long for 8.5 for a satin stitch, right? So that's a pretty 9mm. Anything like that, that's a long stitch, and it can tunnel, it can pull underneath even with stabilizer. So that's why this particular font has a pattern that goes with it. If I want to change this pattern, what I can do is I can do a right click. Now, make sure that something is highlighted. Okay, so I have this highlighted. And then I'm going to do a right click. And when I do a right click, you can see here, it says satin column. If this would have been a fill pattern, it would have said fill pattern. Not all fonts allow you to make these changes. And guys, I don't remember which fonts do and which ones don't. I really don't. So what I do is I click on it and see if it allows me to do it, right? So it sees, I'm able to see if I can do it. So I'm going to choose satin column here. This would be the same thing to change a pattern on a fill font. And you'll notice the pattern here is number 28. We have over 250 some patterns to choose from here. They're the same ones that we have in digitizing. So we have all of these options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one. Oh, sorry, I should have. So this is actually a really cool font, or cool pattern, excuse me, cool pattern. And when I click OK, notice how it changed the look of my letters. And the other thing that I think is really special is notice how it follows along the curve. That's really, really neat. Now, I'm going to go back, choose satin column. And this new 267 here, notice it was relatively big. I'm going to take the next size smaller for this, and let's see what that did. It might have changed a little bit, right? For any of you, if any of you have taken classes from me before, I call this my little rabbit hole, because I can come into this and I can sit here and I can change these patterns all day long until I find something that I think is really cool. But see how it's just changing as I go along. So this is the fun part, like I said, for me. And I can do the same thing for this smaller size, right? So I can change the satin column here. So that is certainly, I'm able to do that. One thing that I would be careful of though, so this is another thing if you want to like make a little note as you're going along, but something else that I think is really super important is on smaller fonts, if you make the stitches so close together, like sometimes you can see how it didn't really show up on this guy. And really, let's see if I can change the color just a little bit here. Might be able to, oh, let's try that. See just a little better. See how it really didn't show up very well, mostly because, again, the satin area was too small to show the pattern. But again, that's how you change the pattern for a fill. That's also how you would change the pattern for those larger fonts. So pretty easy to do that. All right, so let's get rid of these guys for a moment. And I want to go ahead and I want to talk one more little piece of what I consider a, well, I love fonts. I showed you that this little guy, I'm forcing my team is jumping back and forth for me. So I'm going to force them to go back to me being a little bit bigger here. You know, fonts on something as simple as this, right? An apple a day, you know, for teachers or whatever it may be. These are really fun little things to make. This is one of my favorite fonts here. So this is one of my font samples, if you can see that. Just a bunch of different fonts just all right in there. A lot of different ones. It's kind of cool to see about that, right? So I think that's really neat. Just seeing all the beautiful fonts. All right. So had a couple really great questions. What about resizing and density? And I am on my way to talk about that for both of you. So Suzanne and Patricia, we're going to get in there, and we're also going to talk compensation as well as density. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my my screen here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to go into the traditional fonts. And one of the traditional fonts that I use a lot, okay, one of these that I used a lot is the Georgia font. So I'm going to choose Georgia in the little bitty, and then I'm going to choose Georgia in the 20 to 40. All right, and I'm going to zoom in. So I'm going to zoom in on both of those. All right. So one of the questions was about density. So Patricia, you're the one that asked about density. What I want you all to look at, density is how close your stitches are together, right? So that's how close your stitches are together. If I click on the smaller font, do a right click, okay, so do a right click, then I can go back into that satin column, and you're going to see here it talks about density. We're going to forget about all this other stuff. I just want you to look at density here. Okay, so once I have the density, you'll see that this is set at 6. Smaller fonts, so smaller fonts are the stitches, and this may seem backwards, the stitches are actually further apart. So the density is higher. So the higher the number, the further apart your stitches are. The reason for that is because those small fonts, if it's too close together, it basically makes just a little ball in your fabric. So that's not a good thing. So with that in mind, one of the other questions was about resizing these fonts. I've had a lot of people, you know, making the font bigger or smaller. They don't realize the difference between the small font and the large font. They grab a Georgia font like this and make this bigger. To me, I don't know about to you, but to me, that does not look very nice because this font is made smaller, it's digitized smaller, and the density is further apart. Now, Patricia, for your question, can I go in? I'm going to do a right click. Can I go in and change the density? Check this out. Okay, I want you to see this because I'm going to take the density down to 3 and click OK. you're going to see, look at how close together this is, right? So it's much closer together, the stitches are now. But yet, if I made this a lot smaller, basically, that would make a mess on whatever I'm making. So that is why the density for smaller fonts are set up around 6. Further apart, it's going to look nice in that small area. Whereas, so I'm kind of getting into a little bit of weeds here, guys. Are you following me a little bit? All right, are you following me a little bit? I hope so. Because now, if I come back to this guy, I'm going to do that right click again, go into satin column. Notice the density now is set at 4. It's set at 4. So automatically, our mySewnet software knows, right? It knows for smaller fonts, you need less dense. So it's made that way. For larger fonts, it needs more stitches, so more density. And basically, again, you're going to, it's going to have, it's going to look nicer with that. The other little piece to our puzzle, and I'm seeing some of you are saying good info, that sort of thing, so that's good. I'm going to delete this small font. And I am, one of the questions, one of the questions was, do I change the font designs after I've typed in the words or after each word? You know what, Vicki, that is completely up to you. It really doesn't matter. What I would suggest is get it kind of the size you want before you change the design or the pattern, but it really is up to you. There is no, I wouldn't say there's any right or wrong to that. It's just whatever you feel better about. So I think that's okay. The other thing that I do want to share with you, though, is I am going to make this particular font. Basically, I about doubled the size. Notice on fonts, okay, so notice on fonts, these have green handles. Fonts with green handles, that means that it is like recreating things as we're going along. So this is actually really very cool. It's recreating as I go. But I went back to that view and doing that get link. Check this out. Yeah, I didn't make it way super big. You can see that's about 5.5. This over here, this letter A here, it's about 8 millimeters in size, right? So quite a bit of difference, right? Quite a bit of difference. Those are really big satin stitches. They really are big satin stitches. I want you to see, again, not all fonts will have this. Okay, so not all fonts will have this. Some will, but when I right click here, go back to that satin column. Notice now, guys, notice that I have something that says Zigzag and Edgewalk. Can you all see that? This will allow me, I'm going to click Edgewalk first and click OK. Now, it automatically put in some really great underlay. Check it out. Can you all see that now this has this great, nice, it's like if you think about it, it's putting little stitches on each side. So when you do a satin stitch, it'll hold it nice and even. And that's what that Edgewalk does. And I tell you, once I get something really big, I like to always go back and put in this Edgewalk if it's going to be 7, 8, 9 millimeters, because it will make my fonts look so much nicer when I do this stitch out. So kind of my rule of thumb, everyone, is if you get over 7 millimeters, you need some sort of better that underlay stabilizing stitches. All right. So again, if you wrote something down like over 7 millimeters, start looking to either add more stabilizer, like put a couple layers of stabilizer. But in our case with the mySewnet, the cool part is I can just right click and add that Edgewalk, which is really, really cool. So very, very nice that way. And if I use a font and go back to a later, how do I know what font it is? Oh, great. So really great question. And what, Sue Ann, I'm going to, I promise you I won't forget that question. I will show you something here in just a minute. Faith asked, should I use Edgewalk if I change the fill pattern? You know, Faith, for me, I still do, because I have things that shrink in. So I still put that in just to have a little bit more stability underneath. So I still do for that. Okay, so Faith, I do. And Julie just asked, what's the difference between the Edgewalk and the Zigzag? Well, let's do it. Okay, so let's do it, Julie, because I showed you that Edgewalk is along the edges. I'm going to take this out. What the Zigzag does, I'm going to now do this. So the Zigzag, let's check it out. Zigzag actually puts, let's see here, and it's actually putting in a little, see this underneath? That actually is extra. See all this little, it looks like messy stitching underneath? That is what the Zigzag is. So Edgewalk around the edges, Zigzag is putting more stitches underneath, and it looks like little zigzags underneath. So that's the difference. So I think you can kind of see Edgewalk along the side, zigzags around underneath. So, all right. Now, let's say at this point, okay, so let's say at this point, I saved this. When I bring it back in, so Sue Ann, I think this was your question. If you use a font and go back, if you look over in the notes and settings, it's going to tell you exactly the category. It's going to tell you the font, and it's also going to come in and let me know, like, what height and size and everything I changed. So it is over here under the notes and settings to tell you exactly which ones you use. And it comes back, that comes back when you actually come back in, and even after you save it. So as long as you save it, works just fine. So, all right. So Wi-Fi machines, resize and add some, is it wise to not resize on the machine, but then send it through the software to resize? So so I'm back here with my letters. The question about resize and add or subtract, I really am a software person, I have to say, Patricia, and I think it is better to actually do all of my resizing right basically in the software, especially for lettering. Okay, so especially for lettering, I think it does a better job within the software. The machines do a nice job with resizing, but because these are actually internal software fonts, you're going to do a better job with the resizing in the software than you will on the machine. So I'm always going to do it in the software. You can try both ways, right? You can try both ways, but I feel that I'm going to get better luck within the software for that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to choose another letter, and I'm going to choose a different font here real quick. And the font that I'm going to choose is just this Arial here. And I'm going to choose uppercase letter H. All right, so uppercase letter H. The question, Diana, you asked about Premier Plus Ultra, or Premier, I think it was Premier Plus 2 Ultra. Again, some of the some of the fonts have the ability to make those changes in Premiere Plus 2. Some don't. So it just depends on the font itself. All right. So it just depends on the font itself. So you're just going to have to type it in, do that right click, and see if that's going to come up. Again, some will and some won't. So, all right. I wish you know what? I just can't remember. I'm afraid I can't remember everything. So I am like you often. I will end up just basically trial and error sometimes. I really do have to do trial and error sometimes. So there's too many other things in the world to remember, right? So I do check it out when I try my font. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in. I want to talk about compensation just a minute. And let's see. All right. So what I just did is I created a letter H in the Arial font. So in the Arial font. And with that, okay, so with that, how many of you know what compensation is? If I say compensation, do you know what that means? And so, again, I know some of you will, some of you may not. It's also called a pull compensation. And what that kind of means is if you have something that, you know, you're working on knits, something that has a lot of give. If you make a stitch that's this big, so if you think about our letter H, if I make a stitch that's big, when you work on a knit, no matter, even if you have underlay underneath, it usually pulls in a little bit, right? So that's what the problem is that compensation is solving. It's trying to make it so even if you're working on a knit, instead of the stitch going and pulling in, it's going to make this compensation makes the stitch a little bit bigger. So when it pulls in, it's the proper size. And it's very interesting. And again, it's a little trial and error, but let's do this, everybody. I'm going to duplicate that letter H. And I'm going to move it actually over here. So we've got two letter H's, right? So I've got two letter H's. They're both the exact same size. If you look, I've got them set so they're right inside my grids on both of these. This is the original. When you stitch this on a knit, what can happen is that instead of that stitch being that big, it shrinks down and you can barely see the stitch. The beauty is with, again, the mySewnet software, especially on fonts like this, check this out. I call it fluffing up my stitches. So I call it fluffing up the stitches. I'm going to move over here. And then I'm going to really, I think, yeah, compensation goes up to 30. Often we will never use this, but I want you to see what happens to this letter compared to this one. So y'all ready? I know you're waiting, anticipating for me here. Jeez, a little. So here we go. When I click OK, check out what happens. It fluffed up the letter. It compensated for whatever fabric that I had underneath that was going to, instead of it shrinking in, it made the stitch bigger, compensated for the fabric. And now when it pulls in, it's going to be the right size. It compensates for whatever fabric you have. So does that kind of make sense, everybody? I did it. It was very dramatic here, right? You could see, gosh, how much I changed it. This one, you really don't need to add compensation when you're working on woven fabrics, okay? So Cynthia just asked, so compensation only on knits. That in general, Cynthia, yes. you are going to compensate really only on knits or stretchy fabrics, right? So sometimes you have or very soft fabrics, right? So sometimes you have a woven fabric that's really soft that's going to pull in as well. So it's anything. So now I just changed the compensation down to 10 and I clicked OK. There we go. See how it just moved just a little bit, not as much. So it really is, compensation was really made for knits. However, the thing is it, again, if it's a light fabric, if it's something that has give that is a woven or maybe a loosely woven fabric, you still may want to use compensation, Cynthia. So at a certain point, you know, you may have to test a little bit, okay? And it's actually not adding more stitches. It's taking the stitches that you have here and making them a little bit wider. So it's not adding stitches, it's actually making them wider. So again, when your fabric pulls in, it just adds a little bit of width. So when it pulls in, it's going to be the proper size that you started. And I wish there were guidelines. It's kind of like with a ruffler or gathering foot or things like that. A lot of it, I will tell you, you just kind of get used to, right? You kind of get used to as you practice and play with fabrics. But what I would say is that there isn't a great guideline, but it is something you just kind of have to test a little bit. Like on t-shirt fabrics, I will probably go up to about 15, depending upon how sturdy the t-shirt fabric is. Could compensation be used with towels? You bet. I think when you're using especially towels that are like, oh goodness, that have a lot of nap to them, or really soft towels, you're going to go up pretty high because that pulls in. Fleeces, if you're doing things on fleece, either jackets or blankets or anything like that, fleeces, you use a pretty high compensation, again, going up to 20 again. So like again, for t-shirts, just another one of our, you know, if you have a pretty nice, you know, this is a decent t-shirt. It was a, you know, but it has some good give right there. As long as I've got a little bit of, you know, as long as it's pretty stable t-shirt, 10 to 15, something like that. If it's a t-shirt, like some t-shirts are so loose, you know, there's so much stretch, you're going to probably want a little bit more. So again, I wish I could say, gosh, it's this for this, but it really is, you got to play around a little bit, right? So you got to play around a little bit. Gosh, you guys have good questions. Can you use compensation with stitch files on knits? Yes. I mean, that really, depending upon the stitch file. On Thursday, we can talk a little bit about this when we talk about digitizing, because if you create the file, you bet you can add more compensation to it. If it is something that it's a stitch file that you purchase or get from outside, it really is hard to add compensation to something like that. So if it's a stitch file that you've purchased, it's going to be harder to use for compensation. If it is if it's a file that you create, like an EDO file or a CAN file, or, you know, a file that you create in the software, then you really can add compensation to what you need. All right. And Lois, you know, I'm kind of just letting myself go out of order here for what we were talking about, because Lois, you asked about if you use stabilizer on the back of your knit, would you still change your compensation? Again, it depends on the knit. I wanted to share with you guys a little bit to make a t-shirt, or I know a lot of us want to put monograms or put things on our t-shirts. Well, this is not, see how This is a very loose and stretchy knit. So I definitely use an iron-on cutaway stabilizer. And what that does is that definitely holds this nice and stable. But in this case, because this is such a loosely woven knit, Lois, I would still add compensation to this. Because even with the stabilizer, it's still going to pull in a little bit. Okay, so I would still use that. All right, so I think that's important for that. So, all right. So, any other questions about that? I think that hopefully compensation is something that a lot of people, you hear the word, but maybe don't even know that you have that option. And so I think that's really, really great for that. So I think I've been, would you use a dissolve away on top of a towel or blanket still? Yes. The question Patricia asked is like on towels, on blankets, I still use some sort of water soluble on top. However, on certain things, if it doesn't have a lot of nap, I don't use that. It really is, again, you guys come and I appreciate so much that you're here and we're going through different things and you're asking such good questions. If you go to another webinar tomorrow, of course you're going to be at our webinar, but if you go to someone else's, guess what? They may say something a little bit different. It starts to become, how do I incorporate what different people are telling me? But Patricia, for me, on a towel or a blanket, I still do use a dissolve away on top. So it really is something I would use on top. Now, I'm going to go back. Let's jump back in here. Hopefully you all are getting some good information. I think that, I love to go in and just play with the fonts, but once I learn more about them, I actually get so much more excited because it's like, oh, now I can be successful easier, right? That's what makes me happy, is by coming to these and learning a little bit more, now I can be more successful because I understand what's the background underneath. So let's go ahead, and I want to talk real quick about monograms, okay? So I want to talk real quick about monograms. And again, depending upon the level of the softwares, whether it's Premiere Plus 2, mySewnet, whatever, there are different ways to make monograms, everybody. Okay, so there are different ways to make monograms. Probably, and again, let me come back in here. And if I can find, I'm just going to choose the Story font. It's a very basic font, okay? When I put in Story as the font itself, I'm just going to type in, and I see a couple questions coming in. I will, I'll come back and take a quick look here. And I have my caps lock on, of course. I was trying to be efficient. In the, basically in the shape area, you have the ability to work with a diamond shape. When I click apply, you can use this, everyone, to make, guess what? A very basic, simple monogram, right? So a very basic, simple monogram. Now this I actually had to take a quick remind myself of, because with this, instead of a point, I wanted to change this, and I'm just going to duplicate it so we can see. I wanted to actually change this to more of a curved. Y'all see that? So it's going to be curved, rather than, Vicki, I think we need like 12 hours for this class, right? I'm smiling when we say this. Vicki said that we need another hour for this class. I think we could talk fonts for a long time. So we'll look to see what else we can do as we go forward with this. So I want this to be curved versus straight. What I was looking at is I did a right click. I went into edit the lettering, and I thought, gosh, there needed to be a place here that I could change that shape to the curve. Guess what? There is not. And why I wanted to tell you that is because a lot of you probably who are working with this certainly might have thought that as well. Well, guess what? I didn't even remember. If you all, okay, so if you all here see this little, I call it, it looks to me like a little yellow Post-it note. When I click on that, okay, so I'm going to click on that. This is where I now have the ability to change from a diamond to an arch. This is something that has changed around a little bit. See that? Now I've got my curve versus my point. Both of these, okay, so both of these are great ways to make monograms in the base programs, right? Super easy, very fast. Just go ahead and use that. So I think that's a great way to do that for a basic, simple monogram. But again, I wanted to share with you that this is where I would change. And for some reason, I do often match top and bottom lines. But in case I didn't want to, I could make the top one way and the bottom a different way. Playing, you guys, you got to get into it, right? You're going to play a little bit more in here and use that little Post-it note for that. So that is one way to make a monogram. Now, I'm going to stop because I want to show you another way to make a monogram here. And what I'm going to do is, monogram, here we go. What I'm going to share real quick is I am going to get into, I'm going to go up to the Monogram Fonts. And I know I've got two questions, so Amy and Meredith are flagging me down. I know I have two questions. What I'm going to do, though, is I want to just finish this real quick. I'm going to choose the Olympia 2C. We learned earlier, right, that 2C is two color. I'm going to use the same thing, and I'm going to use this straight. If you all haven't messed around with this, which is called individual, I'm going to click apply. And what individual does, check this out. See that right there? It is actually going to allow me, now that each one is individual, I can type them both in. I can now move these around. I typed in, got the right size, but now I can move these around a little bit and change the individual pieces, right? So that's kind of a really neat thing. So that is your individual. That was using this individual piece. It makes whatever you type in individual ones, and then you can change the size individually. You can move them around, do all that sort of stuff. All right. So I've got a couple questions. All right. So one is some of the things that I'm doing available in the Premiere Plus 2. Some of them are, some of them aren't, Diana. What I would say is, most of the fonts, some of the fonts are different than what you have in Premiere Plus 2, but some are the same. So the ability to change that, basically change, come back here, with your little Post-it note here, that is available in Premiere Plus 2. It just depends upon the font itself. Okay, so it depends on the font itself. And then a question about any tips on tiny fonts that would be used in a recipe. I will tell you, Lynn, you really, one of the nice things about our the mySewnet software is we have this thing that is called Font Manager. And what I can do is I can actually search by size. And for something that's very small, I would take it all the way down to like 7 or 6 millimeters, showing plus or minus 5. Let's do 5 plus or minus 5. And all of a sudden, you're going to start to see these fonts are the ones you're going to want to use for doing something super, super small. I personally would choose, if you want to do something like a recipe, the line fonts are going to be some of the best, so that either that line script or line block, those are going to be the best for super small things like in a recipe. They are digitized very nicely and they are made for small things. So that is really important for that. And then the last question, could you do the same thing in shapes, what I was doing here? I could. If I've got this MBU, I could come over here and I could have chose the rounded if I knew that's what I wanted at the beginning. If I wanted to change it when I'm in the middle, I need to use this little guy. If I know that I want that from the beginning, yes, you can do that part. All right. So I missed one other little thing. And that little thing was with, if you have, so everything that we've been kind of doing, really you could do in the silver mySewnet level, gold, or platinum. And you can do some of it in the Premier Plus too. If you have the silver mySewnet, this is where you are going to be using your shapes to really make your monograms. In the gold, there is an option that is called Express Monogram. And that Express Monogram right there, so Express Monogram, that is what gives you the ability, whoopsie, let me get this over here so you can see, you can really let the program do a lot of the work for you. And so this is, again, in the gold and the platinum. And normally it would start out something like this. I made it a little crazy in that I have full letter, small letter. I'm not going to go into this completely. But basically, I'm going to get back because this is the one I like. So there we go. You can mess around with this. I'm not going to really go into that so much today. But I can maybe, we'll see what tomorrow brings, because tomorrow, okay, so everyone, I'm going to close this out. Lots of wonderful, wonderful questions, guys. So wonderful questions. Thank you for being so involved today and for answering my questions. I have to laugh a little bit, as I always feel like I wish I could be with you in a room, right? Because I want to see you raise your hand, or I can often see on people's faces, they're like, okay, I really don't know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, that sort of thing. But thank you for being so involved in the chats. And Meredith and Amy, I appreciate so much helping me out and bringing in those questions. It really is great. Tomorrow we really are going to work on stitch editing. Okay, so stitch editing, meaning we're going to, like, how do you put in a color change? What are some tips? Okay, so again, we're not going to go all the way down, but we're going, like, what are some tips on if you want to cut a piece away, right? How do you know what's the best way to do that or not? And this really is starting with the gold and the platinum software. So I think that's really important. We're going to be working in gold and platinum. But it starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, so 2 o'clock tomorrow. Love to see all of you guys come back if you can. If you can't, it will be, we will record it So we'll have that for you up on Facebook after the fact. So that is great. And then Thursday, again, Thursday is the one that's a little bit different time. So Thursday's 12:30, but tomorrow's 2. Okay, so I don't want to get you confused. Tomorrow, Wednesday, 2 o'clock, we're going to go ahead, and that's when we're going to talk about stitch editing. So thank you guys so, so much. Appreciate your time. And that is, Marianne, it is Central Time Zone. Thank you for that clarification. It is Central Daylight Time. So Central Time Zone, it will be at 2 o'clock. All right. So everyone, thanks again. Have a great rest of your day. And if you do have, questions, you can certainly still chat us. And we'll be back tomorrow to continue on with our Just Beyond. And tomorrow it's going to be Just Beyond, a little bit of stitch editing. So have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye-bye.